Hello everyone and welcome to Frontier Pilot Simulator, a game that I had on my radar for quite some time because it has a lot of and very interesting game features that I wanted to check out and share the view with you. In the game you are a cargo pilot in one of the frontier colonies called Aztlan, and this colony in particular actually went up in attractiveness meter because a new mineral was discovered here called livermorium that, well, apparently is very pricey and very useful. The planet itself has gravity similar to Earth and atmosphere composition, from what I understood, similar to Earth as well, and harbors life, which is interesting. But due to that life, the air is not breathable because of the aggressive microflora. So, well, the terraforming action has been undertaken that will last for 15 years. But they need your help to deliver all those important goods from point A to point B. And yeah, that's what we will be doing, so let's jump in and have a look. At this point I am already a good couple of hours in the game and I can tell you a couple of things. Well, the game is very interesting, it has very cool flight mechanics with a couple of features that actually I haven't seen in any, well, in many of those quote-unquote easier flight simulators, but it's also very challenging. You will be crashing a lot, unless you're an expert pilot. But if you just think that you're an expert pilot, just like I did, because, you know, you played a couple of thousand hours in Kerbal Space Program, you landed a couple of spaceships on Eve, maybe even, and you think you can master that game, I encourage you to give it a try. It is very challenging and fun to play game, so today we will be starting from scratch because I wanted to show you how the early game looks like and how it looks like when you start, and then we'll jump into more advanced ships. So, let me talk a little bit about the HUD. It has all of the useful information that you want for your plane, but they are kind of confusing at the very beginning and hard to access. And it took me a couple of hours to figure out exactly what I'm looking at and how to make the best info out of those information. Hopefully you won't need to do that. So here on the left hand side we have our thrust meter that is currently at 0, and then on even more left hand side, this green bar here is our fuel or charge level. This small indicator is the amount of thrust that we need to put to actually take off, and there is and regarding takeoff, there is a very interesting feature in the game that actually blew me away, because, you know, it is something that you see in, you know, fully fledged simulators, but in more arcadey ones you often don't see that. And I just love this effect. I'll tell you about it in a second when we will be taking off. On the right hand side here you have your stall airspeed, and here you have the airspeed that you would need to achieve in order to have the wings of the aircraft support its weight. Here obviously we have the altitude meter and or altimeter. And there will be, once we'll be flying, there will be a small indicator showing whether we were actually climbing or landing. But this is all relatively standard thing. But what is really new about this game and actually puts the flying controls and your skills to a whole new level is this. As you can see, those arrows that just appeared in the sky are those are winds basically. That's how winds are in the game, and you can see that there will be updrafts above the volcanoes and geysers and strong winds. At the moment weather conditions are relatively moderate, so we won't have any problems flying, but trust me, there is nothing really more difficult in this game than landing with a heavy cargo on board once there is a strong wind that is, you know, pushing you downwards and your engines are fighting to actually keep you in the air. It can get very interesting. So we will deactivate that for the moment because we don't need that. And now let me show you what I meant when I was blown away by the takeoff mechanisms. As you can see now, when we exceed that meter, we are taking off. But what is more interesting, even in my opinion, is that now our thrust levels are below what should be available for us, or what we should have to actually take off. But if we get close to the ground, you will see that we will not land. We will just hover there. This is the surface effect. That's a real thing that happens, you know, for all the real VTOL airplanes or helicopters or your drones or whatever. You can just, if you have a drone, you can test that. And this is something that is missing in many simulator games. For example, KSP does not support that. And this actually makes landing on uneven surfaces, or you know, when you're landing on like an elevated landing spot, much more difficult, especially when you have to take into account the wind, like in this game. Okay, so but the game currently wants us to fly over there, just across that lake here, to deliver some I guess rations or something like that. It doesn't really matter what it is, because well, we will be doing that anyway. And what you do in this game basically is just deliver cargo between different outposts, different mining outposts and research outposts on this entire planet. Right now we're on a relatively small island that has only a couple, I think 5 cities or stations on it. And once we get access to a better ships or a next ship actually, we'll be able to go somewhere else where more interesting things can happen. But right now all we need to do is try to land this baby in a safe way. So you can see the models in the game are really cool. I like how they look. And we are descending a little bit too fast to my liking. Well, that was a bumpy landing, but we made it. Oh no, we're not. See? Surface effect. Okay, that wasn't the greatest landing ever, but still, you know, we made it. So that's good. When I was playing this game initially, like the first thing that I've actually thought about is that this is a great game. If you think that you're a good Kerbal pilot, you should try it out to have your self-image shattered. Or maybe not, maybe you actually will be a great pilot in this game. Well, I thought that I'm good, and the game made me rethink my life choices a little bit, because it's not easy. Okay, so now we need to buy those advanced colonial B2 rations, because, well, people in the, obviously in the colony, they will need colonial rations. On each landing pad here you can buy items and sell them for profit. And you can also recharge your batteries, and as you can see, the fuel consumption is relatively fast or high. And we will need to recharge very often, and sometimes even when you are delivering more interesting cargo to locations that are far away, you actually need to take into account if your ship can survive the trip, if you will have enough fuel or energy to actually make it there, because you will be flying at full thrust. And trust me, I've been crashing a lot. Like, I've been always greedy, trying to get the most expensive cargo to the most remote locations, and that doesn't pay off, really, in the long run, obviously. There is a couple of deliveries and, say, quests in the game that are probably designed to familiarize you with new locations and new cargo and transport types that you can do. But overall there is no storyline whatsoever, and I think that would be a great addition if we actually had like a quests going on, or you know, storyline, or some kind of progress development, anything really that would just be more than just going over there, trading and buying new ship or upgrade for your ship. Because, well, as far as the early access games are concerned, this is totally fine what we see right now, but in the long run I would expect to see something more, and probably there is something more in store for us, but currently, well, that's it. As you can see, conditions in this central port are always relatively severe, and I've been crashing quite a lot in this location, and hopefully this will not be my next crash. As you can see, I'm not doing a really good job at landing. But you know what is hard about this game? It might look easy, but it's not. But I'll tell you what it is. There is an input lag between the engines, obviously, and what you put in the throttle. There is wind that changes depending on how high you are. And as you can see now, I've been not touching the throttle at all. And my thrust levels have been changing. As you can, if you observe them on the very left, you see that now I'm descending before I was climbing, and that's because of, well, many reasons. How close I am to the ground, what wind levels are currently. Now we need to throttle up again slightly because we're descending a bit too quickly for my liking. And there we go. That was a nice landing. Okay, so that's the landing I normally do. This kind of landings are standard for me. Everything else that you will see in the video was put there intentionally, so just to, you know, make you feel better. Of course, I'm joking. That's not true. Don't listen to that. It's just not true. Let's sell those advanced colonial rations, and yeah, we'll get some money for it. Cargo is delivered, colonists will be fed. I guess that is great. Another type of contract that you can get in the game are passenger contracts, and basically you just need to pick a passenger up from a given station and deliver them wherever they want to go. And in our case we have a colonist here that wants to go somewhere. Okay, we need to open our cargo bay and the passenger will board by himself, which is great. You can also load cargo that you sometimes can find out in the open, or maybe, you know, the one that you had and crashed. Because very important thing to know that I've learned when I was playing the game is that when you actually crash, and you will probably crash quite a lot. Trust me on that one. Oh, there's a geezer there, we don't want to go into that. When you actually crash, what will happen is that you will be ejected from your ship in an escape pod and you will be delivered to the main port of the location you're in right now. So in our case that will be the s.r.o starport or whatever it's called. But if you are somewhere else on another island or maybe on the mainland, you will be delivered there. And there is no cost for getting your ship back, and that might be a bit misleading in telling you that there is no penalty for dying, which is actually very untrue, because when you're doing those regular cargo runs, you need to make an initial investment in buying those cargoes that you want to deliver, and they can be pretty expensive. Obviously you make a lot of profit once you deliver them where they are needed, but the initial investment can be quite high. And what happens to me is that when I got my brand new ship, the next one that I'll show you in just a second, I get just a little bit of money extra, and I was obviously very bad at flying it, and there was a passenger mission that I had to do that the game wanted me to do, and I did a really poor job at landing the ship. So poor in fact that I've damaged one of the engines so much that they couldn't take off, and I need to call a repair drone that would come over and repair my ship in the field, and that put me in a debt. And luck had it that I also crashed that passenger mission, so didn't get any money from there, and was in a debt, and I couldn't get any more money from regular cargo runs. Obviously I could have maybe tried to find passengers and do passenger missions, but they don't pay very well, and for some reason you can also refuel and repair your ship, putting you into even more debt. So yes, so there is a penalty for dying in this game, and that penalty is the risk of the cargo that you're carrying. So unless you have like a massive, you know, resources at your disposal and you can afford crashing multiple times, then you'd better pick safer destinations and safer cargoes to deliver, because otherwise it can get very complicated real quick, like it did in my case. So I'll do a couple more of those cargo runs, and once I have enough money to buy a new ship, I will see you there. And here we are, a couple cargo runs more and some 13,000 credits later. We are here at hangar in the s.r.o spaceport, ready to buy our new ship. And in the hangar you can also upgrade the ship that you currently have, and I've already done that to our s.r.o, but now it's the big time. Now we are buying a new ship that is called Ox. And look at this beauty, it's just amazing. This is the ship that you see on the Frontier cover, and I really like it. It's a really nice ship. It's also massive in comparison to the s.r.o that we were flying before. This ship is absolutely massive, but it's so cool to fly, and so nice looking. I really like it, and it has this very interesting mode where you can actually switch to a horizontal flight, so you are not bound to fly like a VTOL only, so you can save on fuel and therefore go further away to more interesting locations on the planet Astlan. And currently we have a mission that requires us to pick up a VIP federal security officer that wants to go to the mainland, which is some 70 kilometers away. Obviously even our ship cannot, our new Ox cannot cover that distance in one go, and what we will have to do is do a couple of refuelings along the way. So we'll need to find we need to basically plot a route to get there, and I'll show you some of that footage, but I don't want to spoil too much. There are many other things that you can discover in the game, different ports, different ships in the ocean that require some very exotic goods to be delivered to them that pay vast amounts of money, and of course there are those story-driven contracts that you can do. That I'm really bad at doing those, and I keep crashing every time I have one of those, you know, on board, and I don't know if that's the general effect or whatever pressure applied to me. There's only one shot that you have at any given thing, so those quest contracts included, and yeah, so maybe you will do better job than I did. Anyway, what I can tell you about Frontier Pilot Simulator is that it's a really interesting and really cool game. It is an amazing cargo plane simulator, in my opinion. It's a very enjoyable game that has a lot of new additions that are not currently on the market. The idea is very cool, like this surface effect obviously blew me away. I told you about that already. Wind implementation is also pretty cool and very enjoyable to struggle against, really, and you can use some of that to your advantage if you know how. Well, the true probably mastery in piloting those vessels comes in when you know how to use wind power to your advantage and not just fight against it like, well, I do all the time pretty much. But they can help you if you know what to do. So yeah, the game mechanics wise, the idea is very cool. The implementation of that is also really cool. The only small complaint that they have about the game current state right now is that in the airplane mode, the flight controls do not feel really realistic. I would say that the VTOL modes, they feel really realistic. Obviously I haven't flown a real VTOL aircraft, but I have flown a couple of RC helicopters and drones, and I can tell you that these ships, they feel like real thing when you control them. It's not exactly the case when you fly in horizontal mode, but I believe that devs can fix that very soon. Also, what I would like to see in the future in the game are maybe some story-driven contracts, maybe the option to choose between the ships that you have and not just have the one that you are currently flying. You know, just basically what you see maybe in Elite, where you have a fleet of your own ships, and yeah, storyline that is a little bit more elaborate would be great. And what also needs a little bit of work at this current stage of early access is the initial introduction to the game, because there is a help, a very brief help window that explains to you the main features of the game, but still it took me a couple of hours to figure out and understand how to read everything that I see on my HUD correctly. Overall, Frontier Pilot Simulator is a game that I highly recommend. It's currently on sale on Steam till 5th of July, so if you want to give it a try, that's a perfect opportunity to pick it up. It's currently 30% off, so yeah, I would really encourage you to try and test your piloting skills in that game, especially if you have this image that you're a good pilot, like I did before I launched it. Now I'm a little bit more humble. So anyway, thank you very much for watching. I hope that you've enjoyed, and if you enjoyed, please consider liking this video and supporting my channel by subscribing. I would also like to thank Luke, Shirak, Skalrot and Joe Loffen and all my patrons on Patreon for their amazing support. You guys are great and you keep me going. My name is Mark Frim, and I will see you next time.